In this installment, I'm going to try to explain a point that's the most difficult thing to explain about the negative paradigm. It's probably not the fact that it's difficult to explain. We can explain it, but it's very difficult not to interpret it wrongly, which comes to the same thing. So a good starting off point would be to look at something that Krishnamurti says. And Krishnamurti says, the one who's looking for a reward is never free. We can understand this probably on a number of different levels. On a very superficial level, it seems relatively easy to understand. So if I'm always running around looking for a reward, obviously I'm a bit of an idiot. So obviously I'm never going to be free. I'm a bit of a fool, really. But on a deeper level, it's harder to understand. And on a deeper level, what it means is that the one who is trying to obtain a goal or seek an advantage is never free. And that isn't so easy to understand because we are very much orientated towards seeking advantages and realizing goals. And again, as always, just to emphasize that I'm talking about the field of mental health here, not in general terms, but in mental health, as in everywhere else, we're obsessed with goals. So we make a goal of becoming mentally healthy, or we have a goal in our therapy, and that seems like a good thing to do. But if we have a goal, we're never free. And if we're never free, we're never mentally healthy. Because what is mental health if not mental freedom? Or any type of freedom? Just freedom. So, why are we not free? If I have a goal in mind, then that means I'm never engaged wholly in the present moment. There's something that's going to happen that isn't in the present moment that I think is going to happen, and I'm hanging out for that to happen. I'm hanging on for it to happen. So on some level or other, it's like, it's going to happen, and when it happens, it's going to be great. So that's a waiting game. So if I'm chasing after a goal, I'm playing a waiting game. I'm in the waiting room, leafing through Cosmopolitan or whatever the hell magazines are on the table. Now that isn't mental health, and it's not freedom. I'm just waiting, because I imagine something good's going to happen. In terms of mental health, nothing good is going to happen. Because if mental health isn't where I am right now, how can I expect it to be happening later on? So we have to find our mental health in where we are, instead of hanging out hoping it's going to happen. So it's a peculiar kind of a state to be in, playing a waiting game. Essentially what's happened is that the thinking mind has told us that something good is going to happen, and then the other thing is we're believing the thinking mind, and that means basically we've put life on hold. Life will be happening when the good thing happens, but until it happens, we're just hanging on there. And I know I've said that, but it's interesting to consider how much of our life is spent in this state, where we're believing some promise that life is going to happen if we jump through all these hoops or do all these mechanical things. And that's something Alan Watts says again and again. He says that from the word go, really, from when we're at junior school. We're always being told it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. You just have to, it's round the corner, it's just round the corner, but you just have to do these things. So we do the things, maybe we do the things, probably we do, and then it's like, oh yeah, it's still round the corner, but there's some more things to do. And that carries on and on and on. And it keeps on carrying on because it never does come. Because when we're waiting for life to happen, it never does happen. Or to express this in a different way, if we're waiting for the thinking mind to deliver life, it's never going to, because that's one thing it can't deliver. That's not its job anyway. And instead of life, we could say lots of things. And we could say freedom. The thinking mind can never deliver freedom, because that's not its job. Or peace of mind. It certainly isn't the thinking mind's job to deliver peace of mind. Thought is essentially an agitation, and agitation can lead to other forms of agitation, but they certainly can't progress logically to result in a lack of agitation or a lack of conflict, as Krishnamurti puts it. So straight away, when we've got this notion of a goal, we're on hold. And if we're on hold, this is completely the wrong attitude to have, because we're not trusting reality as it is. We are trusting the thinking mind and its promises to deliver something good. And in some realms or arenas, the thinking mind can deliver good stuff, but not in this realm, not in this most essential of realms, which is our own mental health or our own freedom or well-being. So in terms of getting it wrong with regards to mental health, that really is the most we could get it wrong. It's the ultimate in getting it wrong, even though we're always doing it and it's promoted on all sides. So if that's getting it wrong, what's not getting it wrong? What's the helpful approach? And the helpful approach is expressed by a little saying of Rumi's, which is, the cure for the pain is in the pain. So the mind is saying, the cure for the pain is in something I'm telling you you have to do that's not in the pain. It's like the cure for the pain is out there somewhere, and just hang on and do all the things and then we'll get there. Whereas Rumi is saying, the cure for the pain is in the pain, which means it's not about manipulation. We don't need to manipulate to bring special situations around, because the situation's already there, of course. Of course the pain is already there. If it wasn't there, we wouldn't be in this predicament. We wouldn't be looking for advice or guidance from whatever source. So that's simple enough, but it's very, very easy to go the wrong way with this little saying of Rumi's, because we interpret as meaning that we have to put up with the pain or endure the pain, or sit with the pain is a good phrase that people often use. So we kind of brace ourselves, sit there and solidify, and kind of, it's like putting your hand in the fire, but you're not going to jerk it back, and try and endure the pain in a deliberate, purposeful kind of a way. And that is absolutely missing the point. That admittedly it's a painful thing to do, but it's not really. Instead of our resistance being directed to escaping the pain, now we're using that very same resistance, that very same purposefulness, for the sake of holding ourselves in the pain when we don't want to be in the pain. So we're still resisting. We're in a locked stance of resistance. It's like our muscles are knotted solid. And that's just as painful whether we're trying to get out of pain or trying to hold ourselves in the pain. Maybe it's even more painful if we're trying to hold ourselves in the pain. And it's utterly futile. We could do it forever and we're not going to get anything out of it. So when we interpret this in terms of I have to accept the pain or endure the pain or whatever, adjust my attitude so that I'm not trying to escape the pain, this is completely useless and it's self-torturing to no end. So obviously that's a really good thing to understand. We don't want to get it wrong. We don't want to go down that road. It's a very stupid road to go down. We're just adding to the pain that we're in already, and as I've said many times, this type of pain doesn't get you anywhere. It's useless. It's the pain that comes about when we're hoping to get something as a result of being in the pain, which straight away we're in the wrong stance. But that is the wrong stance. Any stance is the wrong stance. And yet, I guarantee you, if you say this to anybody or try to explain this, the idea that the freedom is in the pain or the help is in the pain, people are going to think, okay, I have to accept the pain. And that just doesn't work. It's not a purposeful thing like that. What does help is to have a proper understanding of what is meant by it. And that proper understanding isn't quite so easy. We can't use our everyday understanding of things to jump to the conclusion that we understand this. So what's really going on with pain, and it's true for mental and physical pain really, is that it's locking us into identification, which means that it's making the perception of the concrete self who is experiencing the pain extra real. Like, here I am, I'm in pain, and the identification, I have to escape the pain, is an identification. I have to sit with the pain, accept the pain. That's an identification. And the reason it's an identification is because who is it that has to accept the pain? Well, it's obviously me that has to accept the pain. It's me that is in the pain, and so it's me that either has to escape the pain, which is our usual computation, or it's me that has to sit with the pain or accept the pain. Now that doesn't make any difference at all, whichever way we go, because it's the identification which is the dead end. You don't get anywhere out of identification. The only place you get is continuing torment, the torment of identification. So when I understand the helpful thing to do in terms of whatever stance I take, whatever thing that I do, I'm identifying. I'm reifying a concrete sense of self. And actually, the pain that the self is experiencing is a kind of reflection in its own belief, in its own concreteness. So the more concrete I am, the more I'm setting myself up for pain. That's equivalent to saying that the more I believe I am this player in this game, and that I couldn't possibly be anything else, but this is who I am, the more I'm setting myself up to be the loser of the game, because I'm believing the game. Now, I don't see it that way. If I'm playing a game, I adapt to the game and I identify with the player, because it's only by identifying with the player that I get to experience how great it feels to win the game. I have the triumph of winning the game. So I want that really badly, so I want to identify with that very limited concrete sense of self. So that feeling of victory or triumph or vindication or validation or euphoria is the cheese. And that cheese is driving me mad. I'm dying for that cheese. I can't help myself. I'm just going for the cheese. But the cheese is in a trap. And the trap is the game. And the way the game works, it reifies the concrete sense of self. So the concrete sense of self has two possibilities for it, euphoria and dysphoria in equal amount. And so that's what I get. And the euphoria isn't happiness. It's just a temporary gratification of the I concept that is really the same thing as the temporary despair of the I concept. It's the same thing, it's the same wave. So a wave is propagating and it has an upper displacement and a lower displacement. The upper displacement is euphoria, the lower displacement is dysphoria. So the way the Buddha said it, he said it's as if we're licking honey off razor blades. We're chasing the sweetness, but at the same time we're lacerating our tongue with the razor, and there's no way to lick honey off razor blades without lacerations resulting, without a lot of pain resulting. But we're maddened by the sweetness of the honey, we just can't keep off that honey. If we could see that the sweetness of the honey and the pain of that you get when you lick razor blades, not to be tried at home by the way, is, as they say, is the same thing, and we'd leave the whole thing as a bad idea, a worthless kind of endeavour to get involved in. Who the hell wants that? But in our heads, we always think it's possible to have the sweetness without the pain. And it's confusing for us because we think the sweetness is the same thing as our well-being or our happiness, but it isn't, because it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to this illusory thing called the I concept, or the concrete sense of self. There's nothing happy about it at all. Happiness is what we get when we forget about the I concept and its perennial struggle to benefit itself. So obviously it's easy to get confused, and it's understandable how we can get confused to think of how the I concept is striving. We identify with the striving, and it seems to us we're striving for our well-being and happiness, but we're not. We're striving for the temporary gratification of the I concept, which isn't us, and which is really the same thing as the temporary despair of the I concept, and that's a wheel. So really, if we can see that wheel, that is great, because there's nothing very about that wheel to recommend itself whatsoever. The wheel is pure suffering, and the fact that there seems to be something good in it when there isn't doesn't really make it any better. It makes it worse, because we keep going for that thing that we think is great, but that isn't great. So what helps is to not identify, and that's straight away, that's another very difficult thing to get to grips with, because if we think that there's a self that has to not identify, we've identified already. But in actual fact, the non-identification or the disidentification happens by itself when we stop having goals. Because whenever I have a goal and I imagine that my well-being can be contained in a goal, two things have been created: the goal, and there's the concrete sense of self, which is waiting for the realization of the goal, which is sitting in the waiting room, leaving through Cosmopolitan or whatever the hell it is, which is the situation that I said goes on forever, because we're looking in the wrong direction, because the mind's never going to deliver happiness. It's just going to keep us strung out in this way, waiting, the perennial waiting game. So our lives become waiting games. because we're so greedy for the goal, because we're so greedy for the goal, we're never free. So when we don't have that goal, but we are wholeheartedly in the moment, then not only is there no goal, but also there is no striving after the goal. There's no waiting for the goal to be delivered or realized. And that is to say, there is no identification. And so that completely changes the quality of the pain that I'm in. It's not stuck pain anymore. There's suffering there, there's pain there, but there's no concrete sense of self that I'm stuck in. There's no rigid posture. There's fluidity. And as we know, fluidity moves. So it's kind of like what Bruce Lee says in his saying that the protesters in Hong Kong have adopted: be like water. Don't oppose things. If you oppose it, you create an opposer and you're stuck forever. But whatever's there, just notice that it's there. So instead of being like this clever and resourceful, strong controller that's going to get its own way, we put our attention on just perceiving what it is that's happening. Which obviously, again, it always comes to the same thing. It's easier to say than to do. And in fact, it's not something that we do, it's something that happens naturally when we lose this belief that we have in goals, which is in terms of for mental health, it's a very pernicious belief, because it's the same thing as the belief in the concrete self. Okay, thanks for watching.